Okay, 12 o'clock. I am live. Um, let's see, it's been a while since I've done this. And let me turn up the light just a little bit. Okay, so I'm not sure if anyone's here right now or if you guys forgot that it's on a different channel that I'm doing this live stream or here. Oh, okay, I see. I'm not sure if I see anything. Oh, okay. Hey, Jay. Nice to see you there. Okay. Hey, Dawn. Nice to see you too. Happy Halloween, everyone. Hey, Carrie. I think today's Halloween or maybe it's tomorrow. Um, but I'm hoping everyone is kind of getting their sweets on. Sweets go on sale probably the day after Halloween. I will be there. Oh my gosh, Dawn, what are you doing in Northern Kentucky? That one I would have never have guessed. Is that kind of like a uh uh not wine? It's one of your tours. Not wine, not cognac, something. It's some kind of alcoholic beverage that's that I'm missing on right now. Um Bourbon. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, a bourbon meetup. Interesting. And Jay is in Saigon. Ooh, you're doing your bouncing around for the next few months, huh? Okay, so thanks for tuning in. If anyone else comes in, then then we'll then great. Flying back tomorrow. Oh, okay. Safe travels, safe journey. Be there in 3 hours before your flight. Um, so today I just want to say thanks to all of you for supporting me on Patreon, and this is just kind of like a warm hug to all of you who have supported me throughout the years, or like if you just came in recently, then then thank you for your support. But basically, it's helped me fund or keep going with my travels. And ever since the very first time I did my shout out, and I know like Jay and Tina, like some of you guys came in at that time, and it really helped me out, and it still helps me out until today. Because I can't only rely on view counts, obviously. But at the same time, it would be very nice to get those that kind of income in on a regular basis. But anyways, back to the questions. Okay, I wanted to do this kind of like fun where you guys ask me questions. And I do a live stream because I haven't done like a live stream for you guys in a while. And I know we've always kind of like had a get together kind of thing, but I just want to try something a little different. So you guys kind of eked along like that. I didn't think that you guys would make 5 questions because it was going very slow, and I was like, wow. But it really helps me when you folks have questions because I have something to launch off of and I have something to talk about rather than me trying to generate ideas. And I'm already trying to generate ideas in so many different directions that it just kind of burns me out even more. So thank you for coming up with the questions. And it also gives me an idea to know where you guys are at. So that if I create content in the future, then I know what people are dealing with or struggling with or have questions about. And I'm not just like taking wild stabs, because even though I've gotten to a point where certain things are easier or more fluid for me, sometimes I forget where I was like 10 steps ago. And um, it always helps me when people ask me questions. And not saying that I don't know what 10 steps ago was. Sometimes I re-experience that with a different destination or a different country. But yeah, it's not always at the top of my head because I'm already thinking of the next things. So Carrie asks, how long should a tour, especially first time to a country, be? A week, 2 weeks, or more to really get to know a place? And I think that really depends on the traveler and where you're at in your travel experience, or your comfort level. I mean, obviously, it depends how much you want to learn of a country. If you want to just do like the top highlights, and I've had friends who were like itinerary Nazis in that way, and I started off like that too. Like I need to see this, then and this. And I've been to the other spectrum of okay, let's just kind of like wing it and see what I come across, and it's okay if I don't see the top highlights, but as long as I have a good personal experience or journey. Um, and then that's fine. But at the same time, when I was thinking that way, I was thinking more along the lines of an artist who was there for a specific reason of I want to see galleries, I want to get inspired so that I can do my own work. So it really depends where you're at. And Jay says, "Boy, don't ask me that question, Carrie." Yeah, because Jay's he's already into like the long range type of uh, travel experience. But if you're kind of like anxious or a little nervous about your first trip to a country that you've never been to, then it's always easy to kind of take baby steps and plan for a time that you feel comfortable with. So sometimes I'll plan for if I don't feel particularly strong about a country, I might plan for like a week, you know, to just kind of like see the highlights, and then come back later if I really want to go deeper. Um, at the same time, I've also been on the other spectrum of you know taking a while or doing slow travel so that I could experience more of a destination. So it's really up to you. There is no right or wrong answer. It's really your comfort level and what goals you have for your trip. So if you're there to see highlights, then that's great. If you're there to experience bourbon, like Don, then that's his goal. If you are there to get to understand the locals and how they live, because you want to like meld into their culture, then that would be your goal, and your time would be equivalent to that, I think. Yeah, Jay would say months, and to me, I would their time. Yeah, I still vacillate between a week to 2 weeks to a month or a few months. Like say India, that one, if I know I'm traveling India, I'd probably schedule it for a few months, just because I know that that country is so big, and that my goal is to explore more of it. Um, so I hope that answered your question. And if anyone else has any tips of how they plan, like if they're like for first time travelers, please chime in and you know let us know. Um, And then Jay said, "What is your biggest fear when traveling? As in missing a flight, getting in an accident on a motorbike, etc., etc." He says, missing a flight isn't going to be it. That was just the first thing that came to my mind since I've done it twice. And neither time felt too good in my stomach, especially when I missed my flight from Seattle to Hong Kong one time. Yeah, I don't think any one of us want to miss a flight. But at the same time, I also know that the backup plan is to go out on the next one or whenever they'll schedule me next. Um, so I think there's certain things where I'm just like, I'm gonna miss my flight. Oh my gosh. And within that process of getting from my hotel to the airport, and I'm traveling on, transportation, public transportation or what have you, in that time zone, I'm already in that time duration, I'm already seeing myself potentially miss that flight, and I'm already thinking of the backup or the next step of what I'm going to do if I miss that flight. Oh well, okay, well, this is the worst possible case scenario, um, and that'll just mean that I'll roll it over to next day. But I've never had like a hard return. Like um, I've never had to be back for a specific thing. Like I was getting back for a wedding or getting back to start work again. So I knew that if I missed it, the the possibility would be paying for a new flight at the worst case scenario. Um, and I'm not even answering your question. Okay. Um, the biggest fear when traveling, I would say, um, of course, getting into accidents is always one for me, but it's I feel like I'm able to remedy that to some degree, unless it's a really bad accident. So for me, the biggest fear would be the girly things, would be, like getting mugged, getting raped. Um, those big ones that you hear a lot of women not wanting to travel for or being afraid to travel for. It's usually those kind of things of where I don't have control over my situation, and um, it's the environment that I don't know enough of, because that's something you can sort of prepare for and try to prevent in different ways of being street smart. But at the same time, if it's your time, then it's kind of your time. That's how I feel. So I'm always kind of nervous about those kind of things. There's this one haunting fear that I have, knock on wood, and it is actually towards India, because I read, like I see all these Bollywood shows about like the acid attacks and, against women, and it seems so common and available that there are times I'm just like, I could have a YouTube hater like just see me and just want to throw acid on me. So that's kind of my worst case scenario, and that's kind of like been the one that's haunting a lot. And I knock on wood a lot because I tend to focus it. It keeps coming back to my mind, and not in an intuitive way, but in a way where I don't want to focus too much on it, because then I'll end up attracting it. If that makes sense. So it's those kind of things. Whereas everything else, missing a flight, getting into an accident, is somewhat within my realm of control. And I have backup plans for. So if I get sick, I've already been sick before, so I would just go to the hospital. And thankfully, I would probably have, trip insurance to cover some of that. So yeah. And Jay says, unfortunately, that is the sad thing about being a woman and travel as opposed to a man. Yeah. I don't know, like, does anyone out there, do any of you have like really big fears about something happening? Like, what are your big fears? That would be kind of interesting to see. Okay. Um, which brings us to Fred Hickson's question of, why is your first travel trip for women only? And I said, I don't think you heard me well, because it's 2 group tours. One is women and the other one is mixed. Um, he's like, whoa, why 2 groups? And I've never been exclusive in the past, even though like I'm like a female traveler or a female solo traveler. I've tried not to be exclusive, because I also have like a lot of male followers too. And I don't want to exclude you guys. However, this trip in particular was to India. And like I just said, there are dangers for women. There are fears that we have, innate fears. And India is one destination that pops up a lot of fears for a lot of women. And so they'll hold off on going to India because of that. And at the time, I was planning for Holi as well. Now, Holi festival is beautiful. It's a beautiful festival. It's all colors and, like colorful powders and stuff like that. And I would love for men to experience it. However, with Holi, women, it's a little more dangerous for women to experience or participate in that festival, because a lot of men get drunk and high, and that's when things start happening. And even though some people have had positive experiences, there have been women who have had negative experiences. And so I wanted to create an experience that was completely safe and kind of like hand holding for women, so that they feel comfortable in that city or that country. Because one of the first things that was very culture shock for me as a woman was that my first day there, I was like out exploring this area, this budget hotel area called Paharganj. It's infamous as kind of like a budget area. But I was out exploring while my friends were, in the hotel. And I realized really quickly that I was the only woman walking in the streets. I was just surrounded by men, and it was just like men, 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 men everywhere. Men are the ones who are serving you in the restaurant. Men are the ones who are like the laundromats. They are the tuk-tuk drivers. They are you will not see many women in the streets. And some Indian families are very conservative and they don't want their women to be out on the streets at a certain time of hour or just out in the streets, without a certain kind of business or job to do because they're afraid that their women could be, like again, sexual harassment and all this other stuff that comes with India or has that India's been kind of known for. I'm not saying that's unsafe because it's one of those countries that I actually feel very safe in compared to the United States. But in terms of why the two group tours, that was kind of it. I wanted women to experience it in a very safe environment. And sometimes I can be like right now my events, it's all men right now, right? And so like one woman in there in that group, if it were like lopsided like that, would just kind of like might intimidate women. There's certain women that will feel a little intimidated being with men. And so there's this whole feeling of kind of nurturing when you're in a women only group, and then you kind of focus on slightly different things. And even for myself, when I am traveling and say like I'm going to stay at a hostel, um even these days I've gotten to that zone where I prefer to be in a female only dorm versus a mixed dorm. And that's just because I feel safer. I mean, obviously I can disrobe and feel comfortable and not have to worry about things. So it's just like that extra layer of peace of mind in the back, because even if you're around sort of safe people, you don't know them, and it just kind of narrows down, um, or it makes you feel that much more protected when you're around your own kind. So hopefully that made sense. And it wasn't to be like, like there's a women's only, but I also want to test that idea too. Is I just know that there is that sentiment of women wanting to be amongst their own. And with India, that I felt the holy that we would experience would be a completely different thing from a mixed group. Like, I don't even know if I could run a mixed group holy festival just because men will be fine, but I don't know about the women. So with the women, it would have been holy festival in a private environment where like it's a smaller village, um, and a family that runs like a homestay and they're in a village and that kind of environment versus like a big city and people getting crazy and drunk and irresponsible like that. So it would have been a protected environment. But yeah, my mixed group would have been a lot more adventurous. It would have been like uh, tiger safari and a little more rugged, and off the beaten track. So, um, so hopefully that answered your question, Fred. And then you asked again, what country would you like to live in other than America and why? And if anyone, I know what Jay's answer is going to be. Does anyone else want to chime in as to where they would want to live in other than America and why? Because I think for me, I could go so many different ways with that. Thailand is an easy one for me. Korea, I would love to go back to live in Korea because I loved the the technology there, the low cost of living, and um, the low cost of living and technology. I really loved that aspect of it. Um, so Korea was just it was an intense adventure for me, but it ended up to be really good. The culture is kind of crazy. It's hard, not hard to adapt to. It's got its challenges because of the language and the cultural difference. But those are two. Sometimes I think of, well, we all want to live in France, but but whether we can afford to live in France, it's a different story. India does come to mind. Uh, even though I know that after a while I might get tired of only eating Indian food because it's very rich. Uh, but I can see myself living out there for a while. Okay, and hmm, did I answer your question? Okay, Don Nishita. He asks, "What are the basic phrases you feel are a must or feel are must knows in non-English speaking countries beyond the standard hello, goodbye, thank you, yes, no, and where's the bathroom?" I read this last night and I had to think about it because those are the main ones. I think you can bridge off of that. But where is a good one? Not only where's the bathroom, but where in general. Where is this? Where is that? And you can always use a map to help you along. Um, One thing that I found was that's helpful to learn is directions, right and left. It's so simple and you don't really think of it. But like I remember when I was in Morocco and was I trying to speak Spanish? Or maybe I was in Spain, in Barcelona, and I was trying to speak Spanish to the taxi driver to let him know where my hotel was. And uh, it's the smallest thing of, okay, go right, go left, was helpful. And I know sometimes like in Japan when when the station masters at the train station are giving me directions, that they're always kind of, go left, go right. Those directions are always handy to know, as well as where. How much is another one. How much does this cost, or how much? um But other than that, the hello and goodbyes, they're usually just kind of good formal ones for countries. Um, and they're kind of like icebreakers. Thank you, of course, is a good one. Um, I don't know, like Jay, do you feel like there are any extra phrases you need to know when you're traveling? Does anyone have any extra phrases that they feel like is important when they're traveling? Because everything kind of bridges off of that. Like, where's the hospital? Or you could say I'm sick, but then you really could just kind of motion and like, I don't feel too good. You rub your stomach. Um, I know like there's a lot of phrase books that will tell you to learn, the full structure sentence. Where is the bathroom? Or I forgot. Thank you very much. Wait, was it? I forgot. The phrase books will give you like a full sentence, and I know you don't really need to know the full sentence. You just kind of need to know the slang or the abridged version, or the main words, to get your idea across. Oh yeah, excuse me. Excuse me is a good one. And sorry. Yeah, those are good ones, Fred. Yeah, I'm sorry is good. I don't. That's one of those sentences. That I was talking about, Dawn, where it's like a lengthy one in the phrase book where they'll be like, "I'm sorry, I don't understand Japanese," or "I don't speak Japanese," or "I'm sorry, I only know English." All that stuff. "I'm sorry" is good, and it's kind of evident that you're a foreigner and you just don't speak English, their language. So if you needed to get away with not knowing the full formal phrase, and I think that's it, is sometimes people feel like they have to understand the full formal phrase and deliver it in a formal way. I think you can just get by with a lot less. Very delicious is a good one. Yeah, I like that one too because you definitely want to flatter or compliment someone when they have cooked for you or they've tried, their best. Um, and it's always kind of like nice to see faces light up when you speak, when you say the word delicious in their language. Is the thumbs up sign always positive and universal? I think they said that this is not good for Italy. So I wouldn't go with pointing. Pointing is another thing you don't want to do in certain areas, like pointing at people. I know for Asia, I can't remember if it was Asia and Southeast Asia or just parts of Asia and Southeast Asia, but pointing is kind of like you don't do that. Uh, I think Korea, I learned to do this, like come here, because I think this was not, well, it was somehow, it was like not nice or rude, or I'm not sure what it was, but I just had to always say, come this way. Yeah, I forget too, Jay, where it's not positive. I'm pretty sure it's Italy, but I don't know if there's more places. Um, so you kind of want to stay away from those kind of sign languages. Peace sign is like the middle finger, and I think it's like that, right? Is or yeah, okay. Iraq, Iran, Greece, and Italy, a thumbs up is offensive. Yeah. So I guess those kind of things are good to know as well. They're a little trickier. But if you Google the country name and etiquette or things to avoid in this country, if you Google those kind of things, you might pop up some of these kind of ways of not signing people or not crossing that line where you've offended someone. I don't know if shock is always good. England and Australia, the reverse of the peace sign means F you. Yeah, maybe just stay away from the fingers. Using your fingers for anything, for any kind of signing. Okay. What is your go-to favorite site for booking rooms? Do you prefer booking.com, Airbnb, hotels.com, kayak.com, all of the above, or maybe something else? And this is Jay. You guys feel free to chime in, like what your favorite sites would be too, because I can't say mine is like the most perfect one, but I do like booking.com, and I did that one travel short or the YouTube short slash Instagram reel slash Facebook reel about booking.com because of the cancellations or the free cancellation option. Um, and I like it. I used to use Agoda because Agoda for a while because I was traveling Asia a lot, and there way back when Agoda used to be good at having hotels that were more off the beaten path. Like they weren't like the standard booking.com or hotels.com or kayak kind of thing. They're the slightly more guest house ones or the ones that you just wouldn't find on those other hotel sites. So I felt like because I was doing more off the beaten path travels and kind of like winging it travels, that was a good option for me. However, booking.com has become easier for me in terms of flexibility and schedules because sometimes I do book at the last minute or sometimes I am looking for the right price. Um, and there have been many times where, and I haven't used it for this yet, where I've shown up at a hotel that I didn't like and had to switch around. although I never booked it. Those were all my winging it journeys where I just kind of like showed up at the hotel because I didn't, know what kind of quality I would get. These days, a lot of things are on the internet and you can get reviews and all, and the photos will be like from, people who have stayed at the hotel. So it's a lot easier than it was like say 5, 10 years ago, where, things that were off the beaten track just were not on the map, period. Um, so yeah, the reason why I also like booking.com, which is mostly for the free cancellation option, which now they also have an option where if you an option where you pay less if you book it and there's no cancellation. So it's kind of like if you take the cancellation option, then you pay just a teeny bit more than you would if you didn't book it. And I think that's fair because now that I'm looking at both sides, or I'm trying to look at both sides of the fence, because now I'm kind of like, looking at tour operators and myself as potentially, a sort of operator. Um, I see how that's kind of like it kind of does hurt like the hotel who is looking for a booked stay and holding that spot till the very end, and somebody cancels it at the very end and they've lost clients all the way, or customers all the way from that there. So so I like now that they have that option of, cancellation fee or no cancellation fee or cheaper price. Another reason why I think it's really helpful is because people are always just kind of like, well, what do you do if you need a return stay to show as proof for your onward travel? Or like if a country, when you enter a country and they're looking for onward travel, and you don't necessarily have that because you're going along as you go along. Um, this would be one way to show that you have at least a booking in another country. That would be like your onward travel. I'm not sure how strict they are these days, but I know I've gotten by with this idea of booking a hotel stay and then after like, getting through the country and their requirements, canceling it. Airbnb, I used to like because I used to like that whole local factor, but now they've gotten really bad with not even being local. Like sometimes people will just buy up like buildings and turn them into Airbnbs. And we even have one up the street where someone's like built this huge house and in our residential area, and it's got so many rooms, and people come and go. And that kind of like wreaks havoc, or it's just like uncomfortable for the neighborhood because you don't know who's coming in and out of your neighborhood, and they're strangers, and it's hard to do a neighborhood watch because you've got people coming and going. So I don't like them as much now. And not only that, they took away their affiliate plan or program for like travelers. So before, any traveler who was with Airbnb could get, I think it was a $40 referral if you referred someone new to Airbnb, or maybe it was $20. I can't remember. I think it was $40. Or no, that was $40 off for the person who booked with Airbnb. But I think you got like, I forgot what it was, like maybe $20 or whatnot. It was a decent payout. And this was anyone, it's not only bloggers. But ever since the pandemic, they kind of like cut that part out. And it's now like strictly like commercial, and I'm annoyed with that because I have to go through my whole blog and take up links, or like, like delete all those links. But I just don't like the whole community factor as well, is how it's disturbed the communities, and it's created something really, turning something really good and local and genuine and authentic into something that's like, commerce driven. Okay. Fred has used Agoda. Jay has used Agoda. Yeah, you can always shop. Yeah, Carrie knows what it probably like some building on your block that's turned into like an Airbnb rental. Um, yeah, not all people or not all local families are have turned it into that. Actually, when I was in Florence, there was a Chinese girl who had turned her apartment into an Airbnb hostel. I swear. It was like four different four bunk beds in one room. I was in that bunk bed room. It was a co-ed one. And then there were like a room for like one room for couples, one was a individual room. We all kind of shared, I think there were two bathrooms and then the kitchen. It wasn't expensive though. Uh or it wasn't as expensive as it could be staying in. I was in central Florence, so it wasn't my greatest stay. I got sick. Um, but yeah, it wasn't my greatest stay, but it did its job. And it was at least close to everything. It was close to the train station. It was close to the grocery store. So I got to like grocery shop and make some of my own food because I was also in the central area of Florence where there's restaurants that are going to be a little more pricey. So, okay. And then feel free to chime in if you have any more questions. My throat's getting dry. Patrick Green says, "Okay, Christine, I do not think you have been to Ireland, but you can probably give me an answer as to which way is best to see the country for the first time." Oh, I have another first time question. Um, the choices are: one, go by rail with a guide; two, go by bus with a guide; or three, rent a car and go on our own. Anyone want to answer this question? Hmm, guys are kind of silent. Okay. I have not been to Ireland. It's actually still a place that I want to visit. I feel like it's a very safe country. Um, but the best way to see it for the first time, I believe, Patrick, you're also going through like you have some your health is not 100%. So if your health is not 100%, I would say immediately go by bus with a guide. If this is your first time and you want to make the most use of your time, uh, and you don't necessarily need to like explore on your own or whatnot, then go by bus with a guide. If you want to feel a little more local, you want to potentially fall off the beaten path a little or onto the beaten path. Um, you have a little more time to your schedule, then go by rail with a guide. I would say the last is renting a car and going on your own, unless you have someone. If you're traveling with another person, then by all means, renting a car and going on your own might be an easy way to go if you kind of feel confident about driving in this new country. It seems like I feel like Ireland might be easy to drive because it's just like a lot of long roads with lush green landscape. I could be very wrong. Um, with the car, you're obviously going to get more flexibility in terms of your sightseeing. You can stop wherever you want to stop. However, when you don't have a guide, then you're kind of like giving your excursion kind of like its own self interpretations. And that's the only thing I don't like. I know people are just kind of like, I want to be as like an authentic traveler and whatnot. But sometimes the go it local all the time means you're not always getting the right interpretation. You're not always understanding a culture at the best you can. So the quality of travel is good in terms of you're experiencing a lot, but if you don't understand what you're experiencing, then that's where you're falling short of the experience. And that's what I didn't like um, about doing it all on my own at times, is just that I would have so many questions at the end of the day, and it would lead, because I had only myself and my 1 plus 1 equals 2. Sometimes I would come up with these like interpretations that were inaccurate. And for me, being on YouTube, throwing out inaccurate, interpretations, that leads to a lot of problems and a lot of angry viewers, nationals who, who want to burn me at a stake for misinterpreting their country and their culture. So that's where I kind of had to like change my game a little bit. That's more of a creator thing, but it was also like a travel thing. Like when I was in Korea, it was drove me crazy that I went through half the year in a country where I was just trying to like understand what the mysteries of, okay, there's a man with eggs in his truck, and every morning he passes by and he plays this little music, and why does he just sell eggs? It was just like these little mysteries that you can only create your own stories from, because you don't actually have real answers for. So that's where I say having a guide just really helps a lot. It helps you to appreciate the culture a whole lot more, versus doing it solely on your own and not having any kind of local reference point. Then you could say, because there's always that tourist versus traveler thing, and people are just kind of like, well, I want to be a traveler and not a tourist. And that's kudos to you. You can meet locals. Sure, you can. They're not always easy to meet, and they don't happen upon you, or they don't invite you to their home every day. I mean, that's not something that happens commonly unless you're like a big YouTuber, like a big foodie YouTuber, or you're lucky, you know. But people don't like, locals don't just invite you where you can ask them questions. And you can ask questions. You can ask questions from the man off the street. I've had problems doing that because a lot of times there's like language barriers, or maybe I'm getting a lopsided perspective of you know based on where they're coming from or their lifestyle. Um, the answer is not always a strong interpretation, or maybe it's a little skewed. So like a story that comes to mind is when I was living in Korea, and I was kind of curious because there's this in Korean dramas at the time, the women seem very chaste, and like even the kissing, there was just very little like it wasn't like how we are in the United States of like full on like tongue and all that stuff. So I my interpretation was the women are very chaste. So I spoke to my Korean co-teacher, and I was just like, so how do women here view sex and stuff like that? And she goes, oh, well, we don't have that. We don't have sex until marriage, and it was like this whole, this, like, I would ask like, oh, so like, do women know how to masturbate? And she's like, we don't do that. Like all of these kind of like things you would be like, no, really? You don't. And then I realized later on that that was like one side of the moon, and there was like a whole nother spectrum of youth and girls, who love motels and people doing shady stuff and breaking the rules. And that's where I was just like, wow. And I blogged about this. It's a popular blog, or it's a popular blog post that still gets a little traffic, but it's a one-sided story, based off of one person's experience. And even at that, there are times that I wasn't sure if my co-teachers were trying to like show me or present to me the positive side of Korea, or maybe it was just their positive side of life or their chaste side of life. So yeah, the, a guide will try and present, you know a neutral ground for you in terms of information. So that's why I like guides. Sorry, I went off on that because I know there's people just guides are just so beneficial. I can't even tell you. So whenever I bring in someone to uh decode or yeah decode some of the culture, like usually there are guides or fixers of some sort who are knowledgeable and are prepared to give you a neutral type of information. um yeah, that's so that people understand things a little bit better. um but at the same time, I mean, it really depends, uh again, on what your goal is as a traveler. If you want to experience more public transportation, like I like experiencing public transportation, or if you want to experience comfort, or you want to, like I said, just stop over whenever you see like some amazing sight. So it's really up to the traveler in the end and what your goal is in terms of experiencing the culture. If you watched a lot of movies where people are taking road trips through Ireland, then you probably want to do a road trip yourself if you have the means and you have like, a partner, or you're willing to drive on your own. Um, so yeah, I think it really depends, and no right or wrong answer, but what you feel is going to give you the most satisfaction, the best experience possible, um, the way you want to see the country, um, and whatnot. Because my first trip to India, I definitely want to take the train. I knew I wanted to experience the train. Because I've heard about the squat toilet on the train and all that stuff, and and all these berths that you could, sleep on. Like there was an overnight train and all that stuff, and I knew I want to experience that. So when my group actually took a tour, ironically, and I'm going to be giving a tour, um, that's when I was just like, this is not the way I want to experience India. I didn't want to experience it through a car, I want to like experience it through the train and the local systems. um Airbnb experiences are good, Don. I totally agree with that. uh and I still feel like they're at least pulling from local people, so local people are able to make money. And just met up with Kiara of the Nona, the pasta making grandma that I visited in Rome. And yeah, I mean, they are like a family run business, and this has Airbnb has created this fuel for them to broaden that experience or take it further than Italy. So thankfully, my daughter is safe, but after the tragedy in Itaewon, it would be great to educate people on dangerous signs and how to maximize your chances of surviving. I don't know if there. I still don't really know what happened in Itaewon. What I read was that um, something like kids had heard that some famous celebrity might be there, and so they all crowded there. And I guess there was a stampede. But at the same time, for 100 and something people to go into cardiac arrest or heart attack, or I understand that some got like squeezed very tightly, but I don't know if that would trigger a lot of that many cardiac arrests. So I thought there might be something more, like somebody released some kind of like something that made people react, but I could be wrong. It's just that yeah, that one I think they're still trying to figure out. But what do you mean by educate people on dangerous signs and how to maximize educate people on dangerous signs? I'm not sure. Not sure anyone. They were crushed by the crowds. Oh, 100,000 people? They really had 100,000 people there? Like in that little tiny alley? The crowds are getting too dense. Oh. Well, at that point, I think people were already slammed in. It's like you kind of like try to get in, like people like mad rushing a stage, and they're only looking forward, but they're not looking at everyone else coming in and piling in behind them. Um, I'm not sure that there was there were many options to react on that one. Because the moment you're noticing it, a crowd being, like the moment you notice yourself getting wedged in, it becomes hard to move. Like, I don't know, like if you've been to a club, you know that like the crowds can get pretty tight. But in that case, I guess they got even tighter, where people had a hard time even moving. So at that point, you're just locked in, and I wouldn't even know. Carrie says, "Keep my hands up to push off." What do you mean, like that? Like keeping them up? Because then you're getting pushed even more, and then you can't bring your hands down, right? I think that was just a really specific situation, and I don't know if that was a very specific situation. I don't know how you could um see the signs. It's down like a push up. It's down like a push up. Oh, I'm not sure I get that. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And I was wondering like how many people, I mean, Itaewon is just so popular. Oh, wait. That was Itaewon and not Hyundai, which is even more popular. Okay. Itaewon is, for those of you who don't know, sorry. Itaewon in Seoul is kind of like an expat area. It's there's a lot of clubs, there's kind of like bars, there's I think there's a few shady bars too. It's not the greatest clubbing area. There's definitely a little shadiness there. It's not the cleanest area too, but it is popular for expats um, and Korean clubbers. But I think there are more areas that are popular in terms of clubbing. Um, but yeah, then the streets are kind of that narrow. Uh, okay, sorry. Okay, so we got 7 more minutes. Carrie, do you still prefer a nice hotel over other options? I was watching your Vancouver airport hotel video again. Oh my God, that was such a lovely hotel. I definitely prefer a nice hotel over other options. Definitely. I think due to the fact that like my job is to, or it's been to travel and to film it, I always have to be really resourceful because travel is not the cheapest thing to do necessarily, especially the type of travel I like to do. Um, so I've had to be very resourceful in places I stay so that I could stretch my budget so that I can keep traveling and filming more. And that's where view counts really do help, and Patreon and merch and all that stuff, because it helps my budget so that I can do more. Um, and there's a lot of bartering that I do to experience or to show viewers better hotels, because I know, and I've said this in the past, I know that my budget is not everyone else's budget. And my budget is a little skewed because I'm also using that budget to film with, So sometimes I'll spend a little bit more so that they can film something cool. It's all around the idea. But I also have to barter at times for some of these nicer hotels, um, because it's just not in my budget. And if I'm taking like money out of my pocket for everything that I film and everything that I do, then obviously it adds up and it's not going to be sustainable unless I have like a gazillion 100,000 views on every video. So I've had to stay at some kind of like really budgety areas. Um, and I find it an adventure, but it's the same time it gets exhausting. Obviously, I'm getting tired. And it's so nice to have just like nice linen white sheets. When I Before I started my blog, I was like a, a shooter for like reality shows, and so they would put me up. Like I'd fly out like for every gig. Sometimes I'd be out living in a hotel for like a month, and they'd always put us in like a 4 to 5 star hotel. So so I got really spoiled, and I definitely love my nice hotels, my luxury hotels and my resorts and all that stuff. But I can't always afford it on a YouTube schedule. So when I do look for a hotel that I want to barter with, usually it has to be like a unique hotel. And I try to go towards the unique hotels in general if I have to budget. I mean, it becomes like, okay, how can I make my dollar stretch and this also become a really cool video for you guys to try something cool and different? So like that's where the capsule hotels came in. Like how could I find some nice, really nice hotels that, were under $50 that provided a cool and authentic experience. So that's where I got into like budget stuff because sometimes I just need to make it work. And um, thankfully some of it is entertaining. um but yeah, I definitely love, one thing I love the most is like white linen sheets. That's all. White linen sheets. um Crisp sheets. um Coming back to a full queen size bed all to myself. Those are things I miss a lot. But at the same time, I mean, if I could build the whole channel on really nice hotels, I would. But the fact that I can't always afford really nice hotels makes me creative. So there's that. There's that. Okay. Okay, so I think I answered everyone's questions. Does anyone have any more questions with the remaining time? You guys are kind of quiet. Thank you. I was trying to work. Thank you, Don. He says, by the way, your background looks great. I've been trying to work on this background. Like, like some people have like a studio and stuff like that. And I still like the natural light of my other room, but the other room just had kind of like plain brown walls. And that's a little bit better. There's a little more personality. I still feel like it can go up a notch, but I just don't know where. I just wish that I were some kind of like really cool studio designer, because those little round things back there, for my sliding uh, my sliding wardrobe cabinet, kind of annoys me a little. I was like thinking maybe I could paint it or something. Um, But thank you. Tinker is very good. She's right at my feet right now, locked into my room. I don't know if you can see. Yep, there she is. That's my little Tinker girl. So Tinker, yeah, today because it's, I think either it's Halloween or tomorrow's Halloween, but either way, today she's gonna deliver treats to the neighborhood kids, like that way and that way. There's like 3 kids there and 2 kids there. So we're gonna dress her up probably in kind of like my old baby dress, and she'll be taking the treats down, kind of like giving them to the kids. So this is the fun. Last year she was a lion, and we still have the lion outfit, but she just gets annoyed with the faux hair every once in a while, and so she'll start shaking it off after a certain while. So yeah, the dress is a lot easier. I can't wait to do that. Any more questions? Any more? Any more? You guys are kind of quiet. You guys are kind of quiet and yet not. But I'm hoping you guys enjoy the rest of the weekend. Um, Again, candy goes on sale after Halloween. And yeah, the what I haven't talked about is the group tours are still coming along. They're still coming along. They're taking a lot longer than I wanted and anticipated. And I've gone through Japan, Thailand, and India. India, I'm stuck on right now. And it's like the smallest things. I feel like each operator I go through, I get better and quicker at sorting out um, potential snags. With this last one, it was just kind of like a potential snag of we'd spent 2 months, and I really actually like him, and I still think he's a good operator, but it just got me a little scared because when I was ready to launch, I made a mention like, oh yeah, like for my women's group, we're gonna have 12 people, so we have to make sure that we have enough, seats in the bus. And I know I've mentioned this before, but it only dawned on him that I really said 12 people was my maximum. And he thought that 8 people was my maximum. And so that was just like, what? We just spent like two months, and like that changes prices, that changes like seat arrangements. If you didn't plan, like if that's like not only buses, that affects like hotels, and then I started to kind of freak out a little. Um, so yeah. Okay. Liking question. Okay. So I'm glad that I got to answer your questions. Thank you for asking them. And um have a great rest of the weekend. That's all I can say. Um if you have any more questions in the future, just leave them down in our Patreon group, and I will be happy to share them, or share answers, or find ways to share answers. Maybe I'll turn it into reel or something. I always need questions um, to generate like more content, so that helps me when you guys ask it. Anyways, thank you once again. Thanks for sharing your Sunday with me, and love you all. Take care, and I will see you soon.